The following story is a work of fiction. The airline, flight number, characters, and the specific events depicted are entirely the product of the author's imagination. This narrative is inspired by the themes of in-flight emergencies and heroism, but is not based on any actual event in aviation history. The technical descriptions and maneuvers are dramatized for storytelling purposes and do not reflect the standard operating procedures or capabilities of a commercial airliner. The flight was perfectly routine, right up until it wasn't. 35,000 feet over the cold, dark expanse of the North Atlantic, Atlantic Apex Flight 815, a Boeing 777 bound for New York, flew straight into a nightmare. Alarms, shrill and terrifying, suddenly ripped through the cabin's calm. The plane lurched violently, not like turbulence, but like it had been struck by a giant, unseen hand. Passengers were thrown against their seatbelts, their screams swallowed by the groan of stressed metal. The plane dropped in a sickening plunge that stole the air from 283 pairs of lungs. Then, a voice cut through the chaos on the intercom. It was the captain, his tones strained and laced with a terror that no amount of training could hide. He didn't ask for a doctor. He didn't ask for a priest. He asked for a miracle. "Ladies and gentlemen," the voice crackled, distorted by panic. "Is there a combat pilot on board?" In the dim light of row 10, a woman's eyes snapped open. For everyone else, the nightmare was just beginning. For her, it was a nightmare she'd been trying to outrun for 3 years. Just hours earlier, she was simply Eva. No rank, no call sign, just a woman in a window seat trying to be invisible. Her real name was Major Eva Rostova, formerly of the United States Air Force. But the name on her ticket felt like a costume. She was on her way to a new life, or so she told herself. A quiet, anonymous job in a city of millions, a place where nobody knew her past, or the ghosts that came with it. 3 years ago, Eva had been at the top of her game. Her call sign was Valkyrie. She flew the F-22 Raptor, a marvel of stealth and lethality, and she was one of the best. Her life was the sky, the thunder of afterburners, the deadly dance at twice the speed of sound. She had a sixth sense for aerial combat, an intuitive grasp of physics that made the 22-ton fighter feel like an extension of her own body. She was a prodigy, a patriot, and a weapon. Then came the incident. The official report was a sanitized mess of acronyms and blacked-out paragraphs. A training exercise gone wrong over the Persian Gulf. Catastrophic equipment malfunction. A split-second decision. But Eva knew the truth. She remembered the flash of the other jet, the one that wasn't supposed to be there. She remembered the impossible maneuver she pulled, pushing the Raptor to its breaking point to save her wingman. The political fallout was immense. To avoid an international crisis, the truth was buried, and Eva became the scapegoat. An honorable discharge was her reward, but it felt like a brand of failure. So, she ran. She ran from the sky, from the service, and from the person she used to be. She tried to find refuge in the mundane, in the quiet predictability of civilian life. But the silence was deafening. The ghosts of Mach 2 followed her down quiet suburban streets. Every night, she dreamed of falling. This flight, Atlantic Apex 815, was supposed to be the final step, a one-way ticket away from everything. As she buckled her seatbelt, she felt a pang of bitter irony. She, who had once commanded the most advanced aircraft on the planet, was now just another nervous passenger, clutching an armrest as the massive Boeing rumbled down the runway. She watched the ground fall away, her stomach twisting with a familiar mix of awe and dread. The flight began like any other. The gentle ding of the seatbelt sign turning off, the polite murmur of passengers. Eva ordered a ginger ale and gazed out the window at the endless carpet of clouds below. A world she once owned. Now it was just a view. She saw a young couple across the aisle holding hands, their faces bright with the promise of a New York vacation. A few rows ahead, a businessman typed furiously on his laptop. Behind her, a baby cried. 283 souls, each with a story, a destination, a reason to get to the other side of this ocean. Eva felt completely detached. She was among them, but not one of them. They were civilians. They lived in a world of traffic jams and mortgage payments, a world she didn't get anymore. Her world had been G-forces and missile locks. She closed her eyes, leaning her head against the cool plastic of the window. For a few hours, she just wanted the ghosts to be quiet. The steady drone of the engines was a lullaby, and for the first time in a long time, Eva drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep. Just a passenger in row 10, hurtling through the darkness 7 miles above the earth. The first sign of trouble wasn't an alarm, but a feeling. A subtle shift in the aircraft's vibration that only a pilot would notice. A discordant note in the symphony of flight. Eva's subconscious registered it even in her sleep. Up in the cockpit, Captain Miles Thorne and his first officer, Ben Carter, saw it on the radar. A single, unidentified contact closing fast from their 7 o'clock. It was moving at a speed that made no sense for this part of the Atlantic. No transponder code, no flight plan, nothing. It was a ghost on the screen. Atlantic traffic, this is Apex 815. Captain Thorne's voice was calm, professional. We have an unidentified radar contact, bearing 210, range 30 miles, tracking at about Mach 1.5. The voice from Oceanic Control came back, confused. Apex 815, we have nothing on our screens. Confirm you're not picking up a spurious return. Negative, Ben confirmed. His eyes locked on the dot. The contact is definite. It's closing fast. The ghost materialized from the darkness without warning. It was a fighter jet, sleek and menacing, with a delta wing silhouette that didn't match any known NATO aircraft. It was painted a flat, non-reflective black, with no markings or flag of any nation. It slid into formation just off their left wing, a predator sizing up its prey. The sheer arrogance of the move sent a chill through the cockpit. Captain Thorne, a veteran with 25 years in the air, felt a knot of dread tighten in his stomach. This wasn't a standard intercept. This was something else. Unidentified aircraft off our port wing, he transmitted, his voice now tight. You are in international airspace. Identify yourself. Silence. The fighter just paced them, its cockpit a dark, impenetrable void. In the main cabin, passengers on the left side started to notice. Gasps rippled through the rows. Phones came out, their flashes reflecting uselessly against the glass. The initial thrill of seeing a fighter jet so close quickly curdled into fear. It was too close, too aggressive. Then, the game began. The black jet peeled away, then banked sharply, cutting directly across the 777's flight path in a flagrant act of intimidation. Captain Thorne had to disconnect the autopilot, grabbing the yoke to bank the massive airliner just enough to avoid the jet wash, which still rocked the 777 like a ship in a storm. The cabin erupted in screams. "What is he doing?" Ben shouted, his professional calm shattering. That was a deliberate act of aggression. The fighter wasn't done. It looped around, positioned itself directly in front of them, and then hit its afterburners. The twin plumes of fire lit up the night, a terrifying spectacle. The pilots knew what it meant. The turbulence hit them like a solid wall. The 777 bucked and plunged as alarms screamed across the flight deck. "Engine 1 is stalling." "We're getting compressor stalls," Ben yelled over the racket. The left engine was choking on the fighter's exhaust. Captain Thorne fought the controls, his knuckles white. He was trying to wrestle an elephant. "Mayday! Mayday! Mayday! Atlantic Apex 815 is under attack by an unidentified military aircraft. We have severe engine malfunction and are in an uncontrolled descent." The black jet circled back, seemingly enjoying the show, then came in again, this time from below. There was a deafening bang and a screech of tearing metal. A passenger screamed as they saw orange flame lick out from under the right wing. "Hydraulic failure. Main and secondary systems are showing pressure loss." Ben's voice was thin with panic. "Sir, we've lost primary flight controls on the right side. We're hit." The plane began to roll to the right, a slow, sickening turn the captain couldn't correct. The yoke felt dead for that axis. They were in a spiral, the dark ocean spinning up to meet them. The G-forces pressed them into their seats. The captain knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that they were going to die. This wasn't in any manual. This was combat. A desperate last-ditch idea formed in his mind. It was insane. It was against every regulation. But it was all they had. With a trembling hand, Captain Thorne keyed the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, the words catching in his throat. "Is there a combat pilot on board? If you're on the edge of your seat, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of unexpected heroism. You won't want to miss what happens next." Section 3. The Call to Action. The captain's raw, desperate voice detonated in Eva's mind. "Is there a combat pilot on board?" For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. But the violent shuddering of the floor and the terrified screams were all too real. Her eyes snapped open, and pure instinct took over. Years of training surged back to life. While others screamed, she analyzed. The angle of the deck told her they were in a steep, uncoordinated bank. The groaning airframe meant they were exceeding G-limits. This wasn't turbulence. It was a death spiral. She unbuckled her seatbelt. A flight attendant, her face pale and streaked with tears, yelled, "Please, miss, stay in your seat." "The captain asked for a combat pilot," Eva said, her voice steady and sharp. "I'm a combat pilot." The flight attendant just stared, disbelief warring with desperation. Eva didn't wait. She started moving toward the front of the plane, fighting her way up an aisle that had become a treacherous slope. "Let me through," she commanded, her voice ringing with an authority that silenced those around her. They saw the look in her eyes. Not fear, but a cold, focused intensity. The human sea parted. She reached the cockpit door. In the chaos, the emergency access code had already been keyed in. She pushed the door open and stepped into hell. The cockpit was a symphony of alarms. Red and amber lights flashed. A synthetic voice repeated, pull up, bank angle." Captain Thorne was drenched in sweat, wrestling a yoke that was barely responding. First Officer Carter was frantically fumbling through emergency checklists, his hands shaking. "Captain Thorne," Eva said calmly. Thorne looked up, his eyes wide with shock and a tiny flicker of hope. "Who are you?" "Major Eva Rostova, USAF retired. I flew F-22s. You asked for a combat pilot." Thorne just stared for a heartbeat, then gave a sharp nod. "The aircraft is in a descending spiral to the right. We've taken a hit, lost primary hydraulics. I have no roll control to the left. The bastard is still out there." Eva's eyes scanned the instruments, her mind processing the data at battlefield speed. Damaged flight controls, asymmetric lift, unstable flight envelope, and an active threat. This was her world. "Get out of the seat," she said to the first officer. It wasn't a request. Then Carter, frozen, just stared.
"Get out," Ava repeated, her voice like flint.
He scrambled out of the right-hand seat. Ava slid in and strapped herself down. It had been 3 years, but the feeling was as familiar as breathing. She was home. "Give me the controls," she said to the captain. Thorne hesitated for a split second, then looked at the spinning altimeter. They were losing thousands of feet per minute. He made the only choice he could. "You have the controls." "I have the controls," Ava confirmed. Her hands closed around the dead-feeling yoke, but her feet found the rudder pedals. "Captain, I need you to work the engines. We're going to use asymmetric thrust to counter this roll." It was a fighter pilot trick, almost unheard of in an airliner. "Increase thrust on engine 1. Bring engine 2 to idle," Ava commanded. Thorne's hands flew to the throttles. The 777 groaned in protest. The spiral tightened for a terrifying moment, and then, slowly, miraculously, the roll began to stop. The left engine was dragging the wing up, fighting the turn. "It's working," Thorne whispered in disbelief. "It's not enough," Ava said, her eyes locked on the attitude indicator. "We're still descending, and he's coming back." Her gaze flicked to the radar. The hostile was swinging around for another pass. Her mind shifted from pilot to warrior. "Ben," she snapped at the first officer, huddled behind them. "Get on the radio. Tell Atlantic traffic we are engaging an unidentified hostile. Declare an emergency under military rules of engagement. They won't understand, but say it. And find me a map of Newfoundland. I need every abandoned airstrip, every old military base. Now!" She wasn't a passenger anymore. She was Valkyrie. and her battle had just begun. The black jet sliced through the clouds, positioning itself for another run. The pilot was clearly toying with them, confident the crippled airliner was a helpless target. That was their first mistake. They assumed they were dealing with a commercial pilot. They were not. "He's lining up for a gun run from our 6 o'clock high," Ava said, her voice flat. Her eyes darted between the sky and her displays. She could feel the enemy's intent. "Guns? They're going to shoot at us?" Captain Thorne gasped. "He's not here to make friends, Captain," Ava replied grimly. "He wants us in the water. We're not going to oblige him." A Boeing 777 is a bus, not a bullet. It's designed for safety and comfort, not dogfighting. But Ava knew its strengths. A fighter is fast and agile. A 777 is huge and has 2 gargantuan engines. Ava intended to use them. "When I give the command, I want full emergency power from both engines," she told Thorne, "and be ready to pull them back just as fast." "What are you planning?" "I'm going to make this bus dance," she said. The fighter closed in. Ava could see the flashes of its cannon in the darkness. "Now, Captain, power!" Thorne slammed the throttles forward. The engines roared and the 777 leaped ahead. At the same time, Ava stomped on the left rudder pedal and pushed the yoke hard left. The massive airliner slewed sideways, a clumsy but enormous skid. The stream of cannon fire zipped past their right side, punching holes in empty air. The move put incredible strain on the airframe. "We're going to tear the wings off," Thorne yelled. "Better than getting shot down," Ava countered, flying by pure feel, sensing the plane's stress at the edge of catastrophic failure. The hostile pilot, surprised, overshot them. Now it was their turn. "He's braking left to get on our tail," Ava analyzed. "Let's give him another surprise. Captain, when I say, deploy all speed brakes." "The speed brakes? At this speed? It could rip them off." "Just do it." As the fighter banked hard, Ava waited for the perfect moment. "Now!" Thorne hit the switch. Spoilers shot up from the wings. It was like throwing out a parachute. The 777 decelerated so abruptly, it threw them against their harnesses. The fighter pilot, caught completely off guard, had to yank his jet into a steep climb to avoid a collision. For a crazy moment, the lumbering airliner was behind the nimble fighter. It was an impossible reversal, and it gave Eva a wild idea. "He's angry now," Eva muttered, watching the fighter loop back, coming at them head-on in a classic game of chicken. "He's not breaking off," Ben stammered. "He thinks we will," Eva said. "He thinks we're a civilian crew who will lose our nerve. He's wrong." She looked at Thorne. "Captain, trust me." Thorne just nodded, his face grim. The 2 aircraft hurtled towards each other, a combined closing speed over 1,000 miles per hour. The black jet grew from a dot to a fearsome shape in seconds. The cockpit was silent, except for the rushing wind and a blaring, "Traffic, traffic," alert. "Not yet, not yet," Eva whispered. At the last possible second, when a collision seemed inevitable, Eva shouted, "Gear down, now!" Thorne slammed the landing gear lever down. With a hydraulic scream, the massive landing gear deployed into the supersonic wind. The plane shuddered as if it hit a freight train. The immense drag killed their forward momentum and pitched the nose down violently. The hostile pilot was completely unprepared. He shot through the space where the 777 had been a fraction of a second before. But he wasn't clear. The deploying main landing gear, a multi-ton assembly of steel and rubber, caught the fighter's right wing. There was a horrific screech of metal on metal, a flash of sparks, and then an explosion. The fighter's wing was sheared off, and it tumbled out of control, a fiery, broken thing spiraling down into the dark Atlantic. Inside the cockpit, the silence was broken only by their own ragged breathing and 100 dying alarms. They were alive. Eva had won a dogfight in a Boeing 777. But the plane was a wreck, and the dance was over. Now, they just had to survive the fall. The victory was fleeting. The collision had saved them from the attacker, but may have doomed them anyway. The right landing gear was gone. The explosion had sent shrapnel into the right engine. "Fire! Engine 2!" Thorne yelled, already reaching for the fire suppression handle. "Shutting it down!" "Do it," Eva ordered, her hands and feet working constantly to keep the crippled giant airborne. They were now on one engine, with damaged controls, a missing gear, and a fire. The plane was dying around them. "Ben, did you find me an airstrip?" Eva's voice was strained, adrenaline giving way to bone-deep exhaustion. "Yes, Major," Ben replied, his voice shaky but steady. "An old Cold War base on the coast of Newfoundland, Gander North. Decommissioned in the 90s. The runway's long enough, but it's unlit and unmaintained. It's a ghost field. It's all we've got," Eva said. "Set a course. Tell the passengers to brace for a crash landing." That hour-long journey to Newfoundland was the longest of their lives. Eva flew with a surgeon's delicacy. Thorne nursed their single engine. Ben coordinated on the radio. They were a crew forged in crisis. As the coast appeared on radar, so did a new problem: fog. A thick, soupy layer blanketed everything. "I can't see a thing," Thorne said. "We can't land blind on an abandoned runway. We don't have enough fuel to go anywhere else," Eva stated flatly. "We're landing here." She began their descent on instruments alone. The altimeter unwound. 5,000 feet, 3,000, 2,000. Still nothing but gray. The warning system chanted, "Too low, terrain." "We're running out of sky," Ben whispered. At 500 feet, they broke through. There it was, a long, dark scar in the wilderness. The runway, cracked, with weeds growing through the concrete. But it was there. "Runway in sight," Eva announced. "This is going to be rough. We're landing with only the nose and left main gear. As soon as we touch down, kill the last engine, Captain." She lined up the massive jet. The stall horn blared. The left gear hit the tarmac with a jarring slam. Eva held the right wing up for as long as she could, but without the gear, gravity won. The wing dropped, and the engine nacelle scraped the concrete with a soul-shattering shriek of tearing metal and a massive rooster tail of sparks. The plane veered violently right. Eva stomped on the left rudder, using her last ounce of strength to keep them straight. The nose wheel slammed down, and the plane skidded, groaning for what felt like an eternity. And then, with one final shudder, it stopped. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound any of them had ever heard. A moment later, it was broken by a smattering of applause from the cabin, which grew into a wave of cheers and relieved sobs. They were down. They were alive. In the chaotic aftermath, Eva Rostova became a ghost again. As emergency crews finally arrived, she slipped out of the cockpit, went down the evacuation slide, and melted into the crowd of shocked, but mostly uninjured passengers. She had answered the call. Now she just wanted to be invisible. But heroes don't get to stay invisible for long. Captain Thorne and First Officer Carter made sure of that. Their debriefings were unequivocal. They told everyone about the quiet woman in row 10 who stepped out of the shadows and flew like a demon. A Valkyrie who tamed a broken giant and faced down a phantom in the sky. The story of Atlantic Apex Flight 815 became a legend. A miracle of aviation. For Eva, the anonymity she craved was gone forever, but in its place was something she didn't know she was looking for. Peace. The ghosts of the Persian Gulf were finally silent, replaced by the grateful faces of the 282 people she saved. She had been running from the sky, but in the end, the sky had redeemed her. She woke up, and in saving everyone else, she finally saved herself. #meta_sex.05. She learned that you can't outrun who you are, and sometimes the thing you're running from is the one thing that can lead you home. The world is full of ordinary people, capable of extraordinary things. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs a reminder of the hero within. And for more incredible stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you on the next flight.